It's called
Where We Heading? Hello and welcome to Where Are We Heading podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Brian D'Souza to this podcast. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, as your other kind of alter ego, Auntie Flo.
Yes.
And then one fortuitous time, I turned up to a five-side competition, and you were on my team. I don't know if you remember that.
Fairly.
Yeah, charity competition,
Right,
so that was a lot of fun. But
Oh yeah, with Alex.
Alex, the man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you're obviously an artist. You do some interesting stuff with bio-sonification. You've worked in a lot of different fields that we've kind of talked about on the podcast before. And yeah, welcome to the walk. I wanted to ask you, where are we and where are we heading?
Yeah, well, great to see you, Dan. Thanks for having me on the walk. What do you call it? A walk cast?
Well, yeah, that's I call it a walkie-talkie.
A walkie-talkie, a walk cast. There you go.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic because this is one of my favourite places. Probably my favourite place in London, which is Alexandra Palace. So the grounds of Alexandra Palace, which is this amazing kind of like green space that I have 5 minutes walk from where I live. And it's been really like a place I've returned to like almost like daily since the days of the pandemic.
Right.
You know, you're allowed your one walk a day.
Yeah.
And this was my...
Yeah, I was out with my daughter once in a field,
It out.
and we had police come up and tell us to move on. She was like 6 months old. I was like, we're just chilling. Like,
that is extreme paranoia.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I mean, it's crazy looking back at that time. But, you know, to take the positives from that time, it got me kind of out in this habit of walking or running as I do as well.
Nice.
Basically, a healthier kind of approach to life is just making sure you dedicate some time throughout your day to not work and to go and kind of, do some exercise or get out and just, experience the great outdoors and stuff. And you've got this great, amazing space.
It's stunning. It is, and we're very lucky with the weather today and like the sun coming through all the different coloured leaves in this autumn walk. It's beautiful. Thanks for bringing us here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also, I think, like what I recognised from those times in the pandemic was I started to notice the seasons a lot more than what I did before. I think probably what this kind of like rather strange existence because I did so much touring as a DJ and producer. So you would jet off and you would have, you know, winter in Mexico or like, you know, like be in hot places when it's the colder climate in the UK and whatever. And I feel like whether it was my own ignorance or just part of the experiences that I was having, I was not really that aware of the changing of the seasons. It wasn't something that necessarily affected me, you know, as some people do with the SAD kind of stuff. I think it's probably coming from being born in Glasgow and like raised there. It's like, you know, summer is like the best day of the year. So I think I'm just like kind of completely at peace with the fact of like it might rain, it might snow, it might be sunny, it might be all these things in one day and it's fine. And I'm not really paying that much attention to it. But certainly from lockdown, where I was kind of locked down into London as it was, you do start to notice things more and changing the seasons, the colours as you mentioned. You know, these were things that, I started to really kind of appreciate a lot more, I think. Listening as well. I mean, that was a big thing for me at the start of the lockdown, which was setting up these kind of like live streams, which ended up becoming my Ambient Flo radio station. And one of the things that was highlighted from them, because of my basic tech setup, I just had like an iPhone and it was like picking up the ambient sounds and streaming through Instagram, but it was also, it's the ambient music, but it was also the ambient sounds of the environment. And that just happened to be like, I think the first part of lockdown, which was April. And so the birds were in kind of full voice and there was less traffic noise and less industrial noise and less plane noise and stuff to interrupt them.
They definitely sounded heightened on your streams. Like, I don't know if that was just your garden or wherever you were, but it was stunning. Like, it really came through.
Yeah, I think it was just my garden. I mean, there was nothing, we hadn't amplified the birds. Like, mic'd them up as we are right now. No, there was nothing technical with it. It was just this, you know, it's interesting the studies that we've done subsequently because they tracked that the bird song levels weren't actually as high as they are like normally. It was just the fact that there was such a massive reduction in the ambient noise level
yeah, of course.
of the cityscape, you know, traffic, etc., sirens.
You
stuff.
literally just heard sirens.
Yeah.
Right at that time, it was harrowing a little bit. So like to have like the sanctuary of a garden or
Yeah.
a space where you could hear nature.
But the overall level, although yeah, there was the sirens, the overall level of sound, which is just something we're all kind of habituated to, right, was much lower. So the birds didn't have to like strain, if they, you know, their voice or to be heard, you know. So
Wow.
So that was
so
kind of
they effectively took advantage of the quieter surroundings.
Yeah.
That's interesting. They were tuned in with that. They were like,
which also became a problem, I think, from my reading. It was like, because they're can be quite territorial.
yeah,
And so, you know, if a bird call at a certain level was only going to be audible to a certain circumference, like that was now broadcast to a wider area, which then meant it interfered territorially with like other
messing up the mix,
other species or rivals or whatever it was. So I think there's all this kind of interesting stuff going on in terms of the impact of sound and the environment.
So did that lead you on to some of the bio-sonification?
Yeah, it did. It did in a funny way, because I think what I started to do was I started to be kind of endlessly inspired by nature, and kind of reading a lot about Pauline Oliveros with her kind of deep listening practice. And
sorry, can we go back?
Yeah.
Let's rewind.
Pauline Oliveros.
Okay, can we dive a little bit more into what that means?
So she is like a composer.
Oh, I thought it was like you were describing like a technique or something. Okay,
no,
great.
no.
Tell me more.
Pauline, like American kind of composer from, did a lot of kind of stuff over many decades. But she created this album, which was called Deep Listening, and it was recorded in this massive cistern, I think, in New York.
Cool.
And so the natural kind of reverberation in this place was like unbelievable. So like they played a number, like it's her and this sort of trio of musicians, and they played these kind of instruments, and it was like this really like long, elongated kind of droning kind of sound. And I think as a result of that, she started to really kind of question like what, I guess, the sort of paradigm that was kind of created around this whole experience of listening to that music would be. And that was then became this kind of deep listening practice, which was a kind of type of like a meditation, I guess.
Oh yeah, nice.
Right? So it was like allowing yourselves to tune your ears to the moment that you're in, to take into account and to pay attention to all sounds that are in the orbit of where you're sat, at all times. Because obviously with listening, I mean, there's so many different aspects of listening that you can talk about here, but we can be we can active and we can be passive in our listening. We can tune our attention into like the cocktail party effect, where you tune into one conversation and you kind of block out, the others. And so, depending on the circumstances, that can be a very efficient way of listening, obviously, especially in a noisy environment. But with deep listening, it was about taking the time to be able to experience like all the different sounds and not create this kind of hierarchy of like what you were listening to, like treat everything as kind of equal in your sphere of kind of like listening.
Yeah.
And so very similar to kind of meditation, where you're focusing on the breath and you're focusing on different sounds that are coming and being noticed by you. So yeah, I started to think a lot about that.
Is that like John Cage's 433? Where like it wasn't, it was about kind of taking in all the surrounding sounds and
I think they operated certainly in the same orbit, and perhaps had worked together. I don't, maybe I have to look into that, but they absolutely 433 was about the fact that there's never an absence of sound.
Yeah.
Right. So you're this you go to an anechoic chamber. This is John Cage's famous thing, where you go to an anechoic chamber where it's like the quietest space that you could create, where everything is like a sound absorption kind of thing. So it's like deadly quiet. And actually, it's really disconcerting, because you use like sound so much in terms of like how you interact with the world. It's not exactly like echolocation like bats would do, but it is an element of how we kind of like balance ourselves and kind of like connect with like the spaces that we're in and whatever.
You just
know,
hear like
so-
your heartbeat and like, what do you hear? Like, have you tried it?
Well, yeah, I've tried it. So I mean, in terms of that, so the absence of that means that you're quite wobbly on your feet.
They
Because
use it in
you're not able
torture,
to-
right?
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
The padded cell,
Yeah,
I guess,
basically,
that kind of
yeah.
thing. But so that's one side of it. But then the other side of it, it's probably what John Cage was talking about, is the fact that there's, even in this super quiet space with all the sound absorption, there's still sound, and that's the sound, as you said, of your heartbeat, and even of your perhaps your brain waves, kind of like as a high pitched frequency, kind of going on. So
That's cool.
that was kind of what he was talking about with 433, which is like there's always sound around. So it's about how you choose to pay attention to which of those sounds, that are important to you, and your abilities to listen actively, passively, or whatever. To make the most sense of the world, I guess.
That's so key in meditation. So I understand like the parallels between the two. Because I'm sorry, I was just thinking I'm doing a meditation course right now, so I've got that very present in my mind about just focusing on one thing and trying to dismiss everything else in such an overstimulating world.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's why meditation talks about the breath, which is the kind of constant, right? Which is like you, as just a means of channeling your attention. The breath is going to be there as this anchor that you can like latch onto. But obviously, like master meditators don't need to think about it in that kind of way. It's more about insight and about different states of consciousness and exploring different realms that you that you can then access when you're able to put yourself in that kind of state, I guess. But for me, like what I would then do with understanding these kind of practices was I would get this field recorder.
Yeah.
I would
Sorry, Brian.
I would go out to Tally Pally
Yeah.
with a field recorder, and I found a spot like down at the bottom of the basin of the grounds, which was pretty isolated, and I would just sit there like with headphones on and with this recorder, and you kind of like, by doing so, you would like supersize your hearing, because you would start to like have this cheat of being able to hear more of the sounds that were there evident in the environment.
That's so cool.
So you can kind of, it's very simple. I mean, anyone could do this,
It's
you
like
can do it with your own
superhuman hearing.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, wow, there's all these layers of sound there that are like kind of, you're unaware of.
Yeah.
One, because you're so habituated to the sounds around you, and like obviously as human beings we group things together, and we're so good at that to make efficiencies in terms of how we manage our days. Like we think of this as being like a forest, for example.
Yeah.
But then actually when you start to deeply listen to the forest, you think there's actually a million things going on right now, and all of the things are connected in some sort of way. Even it's the wind rustling through the trees affecting something, or an animal there, and it's whatever. There's so many different ways in which this ecosystem that we exist in are all connected. But we as human beings would just pass it off as being a forest because we've got more important things, let's say, in inverted commas, to think about. So anyway, this practice of like deep listening with a field recorder I thought was quite pertinent. And then I guess to go back to your question, like what that led on to, one was I just stepped up my field recording game.
Yeah.
Like by buying more and more like expensive microphones and like different microphones for different purposes and stuff. And I did various courses on that, etc., etc. So that was one side. But then the other side was actually, as we kind of moved out of lockdown, was then the field recorder would just pick up more and more of the noise, which would then filter back into the environment. The soundscape would then adjust. So it was all this kind of like unwanted sound, traffic and sirens like you mentioned, and dogs and whatever.
Dogs, yeah.
And you're like, no, I just want to go back to what I was listening to before in lockdown, which is like this kind of like nice natural kind of sound. So you talk about like the soundscape being broken into. I mean, this is Bernie Krause, the famous field recordist. Like he was talking about 3 different layers of the soundscape. You got the geophony, the biophony, and the anthropony. And the geophony is the kind of planetary sounds, the earth and everything kind of geological that's making sound. So there's the kind of the earth's natural resonance, Schumann resonance, that just constantly the earth is emitting this sort of sound at a very low frequency. And then you've got the biophony, which is essentially animals and plants and birdsong and all the things that we're talking about. And then you've got the anthropy, which is the human aspect, which is either machinery or human-made sounds or whatever it is. And so I thought it was quite interesting, especially when you apply that in a sort of deep listening sense, of being able to break in to the soundscape you're listening to into those different categories. because then you can start to separate things out, you know, in different ways, and maybe like be able to, similar to your meditation, you'll be able to like, you know, have different things being held in your kind of consciousness at once, and be able to focus on them in turn as for what you'd wish to do. So anyway, that was what led me on to this kind of like disgruntlement of all the noise, which has led me on to to exploring new ways to try and connect with nature, which led me on to this kind of what it's called the bio-sonification, but it's essentially like bioelectricity. So everything's electric, it's alive, like living organisms kind of create their own like electricity. It's a minuscule kind of, sort of current that's being created by anything like alive, plants, mushrooms, humans, or whatever. And so various different devices out there that mean that you can pick up that bioelectricity and then map that onto, well, use that data to map onto anything really. But in my case, like map it onto kind of musical notes. And then create music from it.
It's incredible.
I just want to give people a visual because I have seen some videos.
Yeah, right.
So I'm going to explain it like you would to a 3-year-old because
that's my mental age.
That's my mental age. But yeah, so I'm going to get all the names wrong. But just to picture, if you haven't seen this, so it's almost like, so is it the clips? What are they called? The
crocodile
clips.
Crocodile clips, yeah.
The crocodile clips you put on, and you kind of can link them up to like, say, a glockenspiel, or you know, what's the main sort of instruments that you kind of, or like synthesizers I've seen.
Yep.
And so that electrical current then translates to rhythms and notes and melodies.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of a leap where you're essentially collecting data from plant electricity, and then there's a conversion mechanism based on the different devices that you can use for this that then turns that data into musical notes. And what you're ending up with is an output of notes that are, you know, somewhat random. I'm hesitant to say the word random because it's not random, because it's been produced by a living organism. It's just, but to the human ear, perhaps it sounds random. And then that's where it gets interesting from a kind of composition point of view. So what I'd use, and as you said, Kim, you know, these various different means, and you've probably seen on the internet, like there's the drummer one, and there's the keyboard one, and there's the glockenspiel one, or whatever. Like I use a kind of modular synthesizer, essentially a synthesizer, where I can kind of route the data into many different modules that all produce sound and then affect the sound or modulate the sound in different ways. And that's essentially where I look at it. It's like creating this little band up. So I've got my plant data that makes the bass, plant data that makes the more high end, etc. And then you create this kind of like living, breathing kind of ecosystem of which you're just connected to the plant. And then the plant is then playing these different, this band, or conducting this band to play.
Oh, I love it.
So you're the conductor.
I need this. I need to do this. I want to like hook them up to like arpeggiators and just like.
Yeah. Arpeggiators are cool. Yeah, I'm not the conductor. That's the thing, right? So this is the interesting thing. And maybe I used to define myself as the conductor of this, and then I sort of define it more recently as more like a translator
or a producer.
And maybe it's like
what
I try to do. It depends on what the performance or the circumstance is. But what I've been doing more recently is I've been setting up the modular in a way that I think will produce nice results, like it's in tune or you know, to the human ear or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'll just plug into a plant, as it were, and then the plant just plays, right? And my influence will be sometimes I might just water the plant.
Yeah, nice.
You know? So,
I'm the translator and the gardener.
And the gardener, so I'm the gardener. So the plant is, so, and it's a real, because I was trying to wrestle, because I've done a load of these performances, and I was trying to wrestle with the best way to kind of like demonstrate this to the audience. And when I'm up there and I'm tweaking things, as you can do or whatever, like they then start to think, oh, it's mainly you. And like whatever the plant is doing, we don't know, but it's mainly this, you know, you're just doing a performance, right? It's like, it's a bit of a gimmick.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, if I just extract me from the thing, maybe it's still a gimmick in some people's eyes, but it becomes much more about, okay, like there's no human interference here. It's like literally the plant up on stage doing its thing. And that can be kind of interesting in a way.
Yeah, people responded well to that.
Yeah, I think they have. I mean, I think in general it's been a nice avenue, which I didn't really expect to do so much of, but it's become quite a big thing for me with I now do a thing called Plants Can Dance and Mushrooms Sing, and it's kind of like a regular event series, like exploring this kind of way of kind of composing with nature. And the great thing about it is it's opened me up to new audiences. So I've been doing this done it for like my son's class at school,
Awesome.
6 years old, 5 years old, year one. I've done it for like, slightly elderly audiences in garden centres. I've done it in big institutions, like I was just at the V&A, done stuff at the Design Museum, Tate, etc.
Oh, wow.
So it's taken me into all these different spaces with different audiences and allowed me to then ask these questions around what is actually going on here from a scientific perspective. Kind of meet botanists and biologists and gardeners and like all these different people that I wouldn't have normally come into contact with, on my day-to-day DJ kind of like life or whatever. So that's been really rewarding.
Is there any, sorry, just before you answer the question, is there any theory to what it is? Is it just like electrodes? Is it communication? Is there anything like that deep, or is it just nature doing its thing?
Well, it's nature doing its thing, and I think that the important thing that what I try to explain is to say that this is an artistic performance or whatever, and so I'm not trying to make any claims around this is like a language that we should be interpreting from nature. I mean, I think at the very primary level, it's an indication of life versus death. Like life or a lie. Is this a living, breathing organism? Yes, it is. So therefore, it's going to produce this kind of electrical current, of which you can now make, you can now hear because of the ways in which I'm doing that. But there is a lot of kind of controversy and research around, or debate, let's say, in the scientific community around plant communication and plant intelligence. Like, for example,
the network, right?
Well, yeah, the mycelial network, but also just the way in which plants communicate through the release of certain chemicals.
Oh, wow.
And things, which can be like a warning sign or an exchange of information and things like that. And it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, if anyone's interested who are listening to this, the Light Eaters by Zoe Schlager, I think she's called, which came out a couple of years ago, like really goes in deep around a lot of the kind of science around plant communication and things. And she just goes in there as a kind of like a journalistic kind of ear, like not as a kind of expert, and asks the questions, understands some of the controversies around it. Because as ever with these kind of things, it can go into the kind of woo-woo direction quite quickly. But there's obviously something going on here that is kind of like at the kind of cutting edge.
It's aliens! It's always aliens.
Always aliens, yeah.
I just love how so much of this opened up from field recordings when you're walking and getting out for your sort of grounding practices during lockdown. I mean, how much of like a lifeline was like being here and being immersed in nature? And I know it's led to a lot of creative inspiration, but like how did it kind of fill your cup personally? Like how did it help you get through lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It was a lifesaver. I didn't think it would be such an important thing, but I think, not that I suffer from claustrophobia, but I think we're all feeling like a little bit claustrophobic when, you're curtailed and being forced into, staying at home and social distancing and everything that the lockdown had for us. It was new territory for a lot of people, for everyone. It was all new for us. So we were like trying to make sense of it, and being allowed to come up to here and to Ali Pali and to walk around and especially, the kind of vista that you get is, from the top of Ali Pali where we started the walk. Yeah. And you can see everything. And you don't have that kind of just purely near field vision of things. Like in terms of your environment is more expansive than what, it might be in certain other areas or in city environments or whatever. Like, and that having... Walls. From an evolutionary kind of perspective, like humans have not evolved to have be in such enclosed spaces. We're used to like the plains of whatever grand expanse, and so there's something probably in all of us that wants or needs or desires that ability to see this kind of like into the distance. But often in the city you can't see into the distance, can you? No. So that's something that I was thinking about, and I think that's what helped me. But in particular, I mean, that helped me. We were talking of prior. I mean, that was, it certainly helped. That the first part of lockdown was like great, nice weather, set up this ambient flow thing. Like I was, doing the field recording stuff that we talked about. And then the second part of lockdown was like, was much harder. So I had a personal trauma where my dad died, just really suddenly. and he'd gone out for a run, and then he'd kind of come back, and he just had like a heart attack, and it's like he
So sorry, dude.
yeah, it was quite a shock, especially for my mom and just the whole family as well. And so you're contending with this kind of like global pandemic thing, and then this personal sort of tragedy, family tragedy kind of happen. And so I think that I think like having these spaces that I could escape to was really helpful for me at that moment in time, and it just allowed me to kind of process things and whatever. So I know, Dan, you've obviously had a tragedy like just very recently.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a similar experience of like being able to escape, or maybe this is something that you might try to do.
Yeah, I haven't had it yet, to be honest. I haven't really had, my dad passed away like 2 weeks ago to this day. And it's been like a lot of like looking after family, making sure that my mum is okay, which I know, like you said, was a big priority for you as well. And then unfortunately, like a lot of death admin. And like like the funeral and stuff like that, and there's been some beautiful moments in it, especially talking to people that knew my dad and the words that they had to say and the stories they had to tell, and like there's been lots of laughter as well, which has been lovely. But I haven't had the time to sit with it and grieve, really. And I think, as you were saying about like the horizon, and being surrounded by nature, that's one of the beauties of where I live in Margate. And I've definitely done a few times kind of sit by the shore and just look at the sea and the waves coming in, and it really it helps me to see that constant that kind of life kind of is there. It's beautiful, and it's like ongoing, and like just like the memories that you have. So yeah, I'm kind of in a hopefully not a morbid way, but I'm looking forward to sitting with it a bit. Yeah,
and just letting yourself to just feel all the feelings and process it, because you've had so much to, as you said, death admin.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, there doesn't leave much room for you to feel, because you have to like get into that mode where you have to like look after everyone and take care of everything. But now it's just time to just focus on what you're feeling and looking after you.
Yeah, I recognise that. It just reminded me of this, like when it happened to me. Yeah, there was a lot of admin. Actually, I've kind of forgotten about that now, but there was so much, and I was lucky because my sister really stepped into the fold with that.
Okay.
She's like much more kind of like pragmatic and organised than I am, and like efficient with like how she did, just like everything. So she was great at that stuff, and my mom also, like, as classic, you're feeling that kind of that grief and that bereavement, like you just want to busy yourself to like kind of occupy your mind.
Exactly,
and, like,
what my mum's doing.
And my mum was, I mean, look, I think even just talking to her, because we were up at the weekend, I was talking to her about it, and she's much more open now, and it's taken 4 or 5 years for her to get out of what I think the state she was in, which was really kind of manic, for at least a year, and then you kind of saw gradual improvement, but it was like she wasn't herself for so long after that.
Yeah,
of course.
It's a traumatic experience that she's
survival mode as well. Like,
it's absolute, it's fight or flight. It's like she's totally in that mode, and it went on for a long time. And probably, to a certain degree, she's still in there, but she's definitely made massive improvements. And someone else who had the same thing happen said, it's a 5-year process. Obviously, everyone's different. But I mean, I've experienced that as being like 5 years, and it's 5 years now, like, just as of this month or last month that this happened. So it's the anniversary there, and I think she's doing a lot better, which is really good. I think for me, I guess my approach was to try and take as much, and maybe you said this, like the positives of my relationship, with my dad, like what I learned from him, what he kind of like gave to the world or whatever, or certainly our family, and just look at it from a positive perspective as much as possible, and think about it like, obviously there's inevitability about death that we as human beings, especially in, I guess, British society or wherever, Western society, don't necessarily have tools to equip ourselves for, especially in secular society. So yeah, having to sort of factor in these kind of aspects to a bereavement such as that was pretty tough. But I think one of the things that I kind of like took was the it's probably quite a kind of macho thing to say. It's like I'll take the mantle of like now kind of you know, trying to take on more responsibilities, I guess.
Right.
And you know, there's this passing of the baton in a way. It's just, you know what I mean? It's you know, you look at kind of like zoomed out macro perspective of humankind, and it's like, you know, we are in the grand spans of time, like just tiny, you know, tiny aspects of that, and the family kind of lineage or whatever is just a natural progression, you know, like, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try and, that's going to be something that I'm going to try and latch onto. It's like, I'm going to be inspired by, like, you know, who my dad was and the relationship that I had with him and the things that I learned from him. But now is my time to step up. Obviously, I just become a new father as well, so I could put that lens on where like, right now, I'm going to basically step into my dad's shoes and be the kind of like, you know, the leader of the household or the family or something like that, whatever the classification of that. But do you know what I mean? Just take responsibilities onto my own shoulders. It's one of the ways that I thought about it anyway. I don't know if that...
You said something so beautiful the other day, Dan. You
Yeah.
said live, what was that quote you said? Live like...
Oh, yeah, so like, I did exactly the same thing as you. I was like thinking about my dad, especially when people were telling these stories, and I was like, people see my dad in a very like different way to how you would when you live with someone and you go through everything with them.
Yeah.
But there was a big connectivity between all the stories that they had to tell. He was a very sociable person. He always tried to make people laugh and kind of like bring joy.
Yeah. Right.
And yeah, it just made me think of like a sort of way to live and kind of come into terms with it and basically live life how you want to be remembered.
Yes.
Was kind of where I came upon.
Yes.
I settled with that.
That's brilliant, man. Yeah, yeah. I think that is, you know, the teacher, you know, he's a teacher. Your parents, you know, hopefully for most people at least, you know, they pass on knowledge and wisdom and life experience or whatever. And, you know, if you can take that and then run with that, then that's going to be a positive thing about passing on something to the next generation. Yeah, that was the sort of learnings, and I sort of said to my sister and my mum, I'm going to try and do that, you know, just essentially to help out. But it gave me a role to play, and I think that's important.
Yeah. Thanks so much for trusting us with telling us those stories. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming to walk with us in this beautiful Pally Park.
Oh yes, and yeah, your stories from this park, it's lovely. And yeah, I hope you're having some good memories of your dad on his passing anniversary.
Yeah, thanks.
And lots of love to you and your family.
Same. Thanks.
All right, signing out. See you later.